Welcome to Neighborhood Church Online. My name is Jordan. If this is your first time checking us out, we are so glad you're here. At Neighborhood, we exist to inspire people wherever they are to live like Jesus wherever they go. So no matter who you are or what your story is, we want you to know you are welcome here. Service is just about to begin. And hey, to stay in the loop with everything going on at Neighborhood Church or to take a next step with us, head to ncvisalia.com. For now, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning and welcome to Neighborhood. Let's do some singing together. So Saturday was silent, surely it was through. But since when has impossible ever stopped you? Friday's disappointment, Sunday's empty too. But since when has impossible ever stopped you? And this is the sound of dry bones rattling. And this is the praise making dead men walk again. So open the grave, I'm coming out, I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. In Pentecostal fire, stirring something new. You're not gonna run out of miracles anytime soon. And resurrection power runs in my veins too, yeah. I believe there's another miracle here in this room. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. And this is the place making dead men walk again. So open the grave, I'm coming out, I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. See, my God is able to save and deliver and heal and restore anything that he wants to. Just ask the man who was thrown on the bones of Elijah if there's anything that he can't do. Just ask the stone that was rolled out the tomb in the garden. What happens when God says to move? I feel him moving it now. I feel him doing it now. I feel him praise, making dead men walk again. So open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling.
One step at a time, I've made up my mind. I know you will lead me through. Trust and obey, depend on your grace. I'm leaving the rest to you. And I don't know the answers you'll provide, but I know I can trust you with my life. Even when the evening comes, everything is said and done. I believe your faithfulness isn't finished. You are who you say you are. You finish every work you start. I believe your faithfulness isn't finished. And I know your ways are higher than mine. Why should I doubt you, Lord? 'Cause you're never late, you're always on time. Why would I rush the Father's heart? Even when the evening comes, everything is said and done. I believe your faithfulness isn't finished. You are who you say you are. Finish every work you Your name is great and greatly to be praised. Your name is great and greatly to be praised. Adonai, Elohim.
God, we are just so thankful. We are so thankful that you are a good God. You are a worthy God. That no matter what, you are always by our side. God, I pray for everyone here today. I pray that they can let go and let you, God. I pray that whatever is holding on to them, whatever they may have, God, that they release it, they relinquish it to you. Sometimes it's so easy for us to go about our day and never think of you and never just trust you, God. And I pray that we will just allow you to speak into our lives and that we can trust you because you are a worthy God. You are a good God. It's in your precious name we pray. Amen. Thank you guys so much for worshiping with us this morning. Go ahead and have a seat and take a look at those screens.
Well, good morning, neighborhood. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Before we move on to the rest of the service, I wanted to take a moment to catch you up to speed with everything happening around here. If you are new with us, a special welcome. We don't take it for granted that you chose to give up part of your weekend to come to church. And after the service, be sure to stop by the Next Lounge. It's just to your right as you exit the auditorium, and we've got a free gift that's waiting for you. You can choose between a 4-pint glass or a coffee mug as a way of saying thanks for being our guest. And on the card in front of you is a QR code. If you scan it, it will take you straight to our digital bulletin at ncvisalia.com, where you can find all the latest and all the ways to get connected and get involved here at Neighborhood. And in the next couple of weeks, we have 2 big family events coming up. First is our Back to School Bash on Sunday, August 10th. It's the perfect way to hit reset on your family's rhythm as we kick off the new school year. Whether you're getting ready for early alarms or lunch boxes or just trying to survive school drop-off, this Sunday is for you. We'll have all the fun planned out in all of our kids' and students' environments during our regular weekend services. So come and join us and prepare for the year ahead. The following Sunday, on August 17th, Kids Stuff is back. Kids Stuff is a high-energy, interactive family experience to help your family connect with God and each other. Kids Stuff is full of fun and music and laughter and an LED wristband experience that makes you part of the show. Doors will open at 5:45 and the show starts at 6 p.m. Kids Stuff is for parents and kids from kinder to 6th grade, so don't forget to invite your neighbors and friends and school classmates to come with you. Kids Stuff is free, everyone is welcome. Well, at Neighborhood, we're big about creating spaces where people can grow in their faith, and your generosity plays a critical part in that. Giving to the mission of Neighborhood helps us continue creating opportunities for families and kids to grow in their faith. You can give online at ncvisalia.com/give or text NC Visalia to 77977 or drop your gift in one of the giving boxes as you leave. Well, this morning, our lead pastor, Forrest Jenin, is back as we continue our 7 Deadly Sins series. Thanks again for being here. Let's dive into the rest of the service.
Morning, Neighborhood Church. How we doing? Hey, it is fantastic to be back with you. I've sort of stepped away from being up here on the stage on a Sunday morning for the last few weeks, just taking a little time off and getting some of our other communicators an opportunity, and it's been fantastic. But I'm happy to be back and continue our conversation. If you're just joining us, we've affectionately called Summer of 2025 our Summer of Sin. And it's because we've been walking through a rather infamous sin list that's affectionately also called the 7 deadly sins. But here's the thing, we get it. This tiny little word, sin, does carry a ton of baggage. And unfortunately, I think probably for many of you in this room, that word's been weaponized. You've felt like it's been used to control your behavior, just sort of, and we get that. And we haven't really been able to address that in this series. And so what we've done is we've created a separate environment to sort of deal with it and take on some of the weight and baggage of this tiny little word. And so next Sunday night, for a couple of hours, we're just gonna get together, myself, Jordan, and whoever wants to come, and we're calling it the S word. And here's what I think. I think the content's gonna be great, but I think you're gonna leave with some clarity, and I think a lot more freedom than maybe you'd expect coming out of a conversation on the S word, sin. And so I hope you join us. If you want to RSVP, it's free, but we kind of like to know how many people are coming so we can have the appropriate amount of tables and chairs and snacks and all of that. But it's just at ncvisalia.com, and you can reach out and RSVP. Okay, so far this summer, here's where we've been, 7 deadly sins. Here's the sins we've covered: pride, greed, lust, gluttony, envy. These are all they're fantastic. Today, though, we're talking about wrath. And so for the next half hour, I'm just gonna yell at all of you. Actually, the first thing that came to mind when I sat down to think about all of this is the Incredible Hulk. You know this character, right? And I'm a Gen Xer, so when I think Hulk, I don't think the Avengers. I think the bodybuilder Lou Ferrigno. You know this guy. Gen Xers, anyone grow up on the Incredible Hulk from the 70s and 80s? He's just the best Hulk ever. And now, if you have grown up, though, in a cave since the 70s, and you don't know the Hulk's story, I want to tell you his story because I think it has a lot to do with our conversation on the topic of wrath. So the Hulk is actually a doctor. It's Dr. Bruce Banner, brilliant, you'd be surprised, mild-mannered scientist who gets exposed to gamma radiation. And from that point on, every time he gets angry or just really emotionally overwhelmed, he transforms into this angry green guy, the Incredible Hulk. And the Hulk is just like this uncontrollable, destructive force of rage. And the more he tries to suppress the emotion, the worse the outburst gets. And here's the thing, though. Dr. Banner doesn't want to become the Hulk. He's not proud of what he does when he's angry. In fact, he's ashamed of it. He pushes people away. He runs. He hides, because when wrath takes over, when that kind of rage takes over, right, people get hurt. And not just the people we're mad at. Sometimes it's the people that are closest to us that we love the most. And sometimes it's even innocent bystanders. The Hulk loses control of his thoughts, loses control of his actions, can't distinguish friend from foe. Right? The Hulk's entire identity is consumed by emotion. The Hulk is this picture of what it looks like when our emotions control us instead of us controlling our emotions. And while anger is an emotion, or rather we could say a cluster of emotions, wrath, maybe the best way to understand wrath is to think of it this way, that wrath is anger gone wild. Wrath is anger gone wild. Wrath is what happens when anger becomes chronic, when anger becomes suppressed, and at times when anger comes out in this Hulk-like explosiveness. Wrath is what happens when anger takes root in our heart and begins to take over. It's when we stop caring who gets hurt. It's when we stew, explode, lash out, or shut people out entirely because we've been wounded and now we're motivated by wounding back. Wrath says, I'm not just angry. I want you to feel my anger. I want you to hurt like I hurt. The Hulk doesn't make calculated decisions. He smashes, he reacts, and later, Bruce Banner's left picking up the pieces of Hulk's rampage that just destroyed cities and even allies and causes innocent people to run in fear. Even when the Hulk is trying to help, his wrath tends to leave scars because that's what wrath does. It doesn't just hurt the people around us. It damages our relationships, it damages our peace, and it even begins to take over our sense of identity, who we are. But here's what I love. Over time, Bruce Banner begins to face the Hulk head on, not just run from him. He leans into, begins to learn how to integrate his anger, not ignore it, not explode from it, but to own it and to transform it. In the Marvel movie, The Endgame, we see a new version of the Hulk emerge. Strong still, yes, but calm and mild manner, having lunch at a diner. Thoughtful, integrated. And I think that's not unlike the journey maybe you and I are invited into. Not to pretend we don't get angry, but to refuse to let anger define us and turn into wrath, but rather to be people who learn how to feel, process, release what's boiling inside of us before it breaks us and the people around us. Because there's quite a difference between just feeling angry and then acting out in wrath. Here's the problem, though, I think, with this conversation. I think wrath for us in our brains feels and sounds more like a comic book, like it's not real. Like wrath isn't something like real people are dealing with. Sure, we all get mad or whatever. Maybe some of us have a problem with anger, but we'd never say like wrath because that is like the Incredible Hulk. Or if you don't see it as comic book, you might tend to over-spiritualize it, right? Because that sounds like a Bible word, wrath. Right? And maybe you've even heard or been abused by the phrase like God's wrath, right? I mean, that can do tremendous damage in our lives. But wrath isn't actually just for comic books or the Bible. Wrath is very real. Wrath really is a sin, if you will, with deadly consequences. Because wrath is anger turned toxic. And wrath looks like punishment instead of resolution. Wrath looks like replaying those wrongs in your head over and over and over again. Many of you, I know, have pretty long memories, and you hold a pretty serious grudge. Wrath looks like outbursts that are out of proportion. Wrath looks like a desire to hurt or shame. Wrath looks like a refusal to forgive or even engage. Now, depending on your perspective, I mean, anger's a topic that's a little bit divided. As some would say anger can be productive with appropriate boundaries and clarity. Very rarely see that, right? And some would say, anger probably just needs to be dealt with immediately and pushed out fast. Because, clarity and appropriate boundaries are just hard to come by when we're mad. But wrath, on the other hand, there's no argument. It is never good. It is always destructive, and it is never constructive. It's anger that is stewed and intensified and been weaponized, and it's vengeful and out of proportion. And I will add this. wrath isn't always loud. Wrath doesn't always look like the Hulk. The wrath can show up in things like resentment. It can show up, maybe you can relate to this, as quiet moodiness, an unwillingness to forgive. Wrath can leak out through sarcasm, cold shoulders, small acts of sabotage that just chip away at peace. Wrath isn't always shouting and slamming doors. It's death by 1,000 little jabs. Wrath doesn't just feel emotion. Wrath wants to punish. Maybe we could say it this way. Anger is the smoke alarm going off in your house. That's annoying. Wrath is lighting the house on fire because you're mad at Smokey in your house, right? And here's the thing, not a new problem, definitely still a problem, but wrath and unchecked anger have been an issue since there have been people breathing. And one of the most fascinating things is that Jesus of Nazareth actually addresses this topic head on. And if you're new to Neighborhood, we call ourselves a Jesus church. We just see Jesus of Nazareth as the most compelling figure in history and in eternity and worth sort of modeling our lives after. And so when we ask questions or want to talk about something, we tend to go to Jesus. And Jesus deals with wrath. He deals with anger head on in a particular teaching that has come to be known as the Sermon on the Mount. Now we call it that because it's a teaching he gave to a group of people on a hillside overlooking a lake in northern Israel. So we call it the Sermon on the Mount. And it's so important. In fact, if you're a Bible person, you'd identify as like Christian, I would say more than any other part of the Bible, you should read the Sermon on the Mount. It's in one of the surviving biographies that we have of the life of Jesus called Matthew. It's written by a guy named Matthew. And it's in chapters 5, 6, and 7. It takes about 19 minutes to read. It's not long, but it is the single place where we have the most sort of teaching of Jesus where he just is like, this is how you live fully human. This is how you thrive. This is how you lean in to the best version of yourself. But today, we're just gonna look at the little chunk that Jesus talks about anger and wrath. And so here's what he says. He's overlooking, it's beautiful, it's overlooking a lake in the northern part of Israel. He says this, "You've heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fires of hell." Now, I want to walk through this passage just for a moment because this isn't just Jesus being dramatic, although he's using fairly dramatic language to make his point. And I would say this isn't a Christian teaching. This is just human timeless wisdom. And it's interesting. Here's what the first thing Jesus does is he draws a straight line between our anger and murder. And we should be asking the question, that doesn't feel like a straight line. Why is Jesus making it a straight line? And the answer is because they both flow from the same root. And Jesus' focus here, now again, we've talked about this a lot. The Bible's not written in English. It didn't just fall out of the sky, like it's really old. And this particular passage was written in Greek. And in Greek, if we had time, it's not just any old kind of anger. Jesus is not talking about just, any old kind of anger. He's talking about this like simmering, brooding anger that becomes a grudge and sort of distorts how we see people. Right? This isn't about never feeling anger. Jesus himself, from time to time, got angry. This is about, Jesus is talking to like nursing that anger, letting it live inside of you, turning it into this wrathful kind of contempt. Anger, the emotion, I think anger, the emotion, let's just define it this way. Anger as the emotion or cluster of emotions is just the spontaneous feeling that comes over us when our will is frustrated. Now that's fancy for, I feel pretty strongly when I don't get my way. And it's not just your 2-year-old who acts like this. It's the 62-year-old in here. We all get mad when we don't get our way. We do. And it can be over anything. It could be over ego, maybe injustice, pain, trauma, you name it. I mean, you can be angry over anytime you don't get your way. We have a hard time learning the lesson that it's in fact okay to not get my way. It's okay. That feeling that comes over us isn't deadly. And in this teaching, Jesus is not talking about that feeling that's sometimes just out of nowhere, right? But it can quickly dissipate. Jesus is talking about something deeper, an ongoing state of this resentful kind of anger, the kind of anger that stays and festers and eventually will deform into what we can call wrath. And then it's really interesting. Jesus turns the conversation. So he draws that straight line, right? Anger, murder. And he does that because it's kind of all flowing from the same root. But then he turns the conversation onto just our language, what we say. And he says, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fires of hell. Now, calling someone Raka, I know many of you are like, what is that? And I've never done that, so I'm good. Right? Raka is just like a street insult, like 2,000 years ago in Israel. Fool, and again, it's written in Greek, it's actually the Greek word that's used is the root of our word moron. And you might be saying, really, Jesus, this seems a little petty, right? Hell for calling someone dumb? And you'd be right. That's not Jesus' point here at all. Jesus isn't being petty. He is, though, trying to expose something, I think, a little deeper. Jesus is talking about being angry enough or letting anger stew long enough that we now are making judgments on somebody's worth as a person. When we go past saying, you're wrong, I disagree with you, I'm a little grumpy, you're the reason I'm not getting my way, and we turn it into a they're worthless issue, that's an issue. Jesus' point is not, you're going to hell if you say moron, like just give it a rest. That's not the deal. He's addressing a particular kind of speech pattern because it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a simmering anger. It comes from contempt. It comes from an anger that's been left to rot, and now it's finding its way out into the world. That's wrath. Jesus was speaking 2,000 years ago. Israel was an honor-shame society. And I thought about for a moment, like, oh, I should probably explain honor-shame societies, but then I realized we're not that far away from an honor-shame society. We know exactly what it's like to use sarcasm to cut somebody down. We've seen how gossip can cancel somebody's reputation. We know what it looks like for someone to leverage social media to shame someone. And they do it without even thinking twice about it. And Jesus says, yeah, when you do that, it matters. It matters deeply. It matters perhaps even eternally. Now, Jesus' specific word, right, he says, like, you'll be in danger of the fire of hell. Okay, that you're getting intense, Jesus. Now, the word that we're translating hell is actually a place. Jesus uses the word Gehenna. Gehenna is a real place. It still exists today. It's actually the Valley of Hinnom outside of the old city of Jerusalem. That's what it looks like today. It's actually quite lovely. Gehenna is not an abstract concept. It's a real place. And way before Jesus ever came along, it was a place of child sacrifice. During the time of Jesus, it was essentially the city dump. And the point that Jesus is making is that it is a place, hell is a place that's sort of, well, it's a place of ruin. And when Jesus references Gehenna specifically, he's pointing to what happens when anger goes unchecked. It destroys. It is a place of ruin. This isn't a conversation about the afterlife. This is a conversation about your life today. Because Jesus is not talking about hell as some place you go, where the bad people go. It can be in your living room. It can be in your workplace. It can be in your friendships. Hell is what happens when wrath runs the show. When we say things we can't take back, when we humiliate to win an argument, when we lose control, when we stop just caring about who gets hurt. I think Jesus' point, the point he's trying to make, and again, he's using this kind of dramatic language, is, hey, before you ever threw a punch, you probably threw a sentence. Before you lashed out physically, you probably lashed out verbally. We don't say things like, you fool, to make peace with somebody. We say them to wound, to devalue, to destroy. That's what wrath does. It turns people into enemies, and listen, it turns our moments into battlefields. How many of you have experienced that? As I sat down to write this teaching, I thought, I'm just gonna open my news feed and just see if any sort of wrathful kind of articles pop up. Of course they did. Two that I found particularly compelling. Number one, teen shot during road rage shooting in Texas. 17-year-old was literally shot in the face over a car dispute on the road. Here was the other one. McDonald's employees charged after stabbing their manager. A 26-year-old employee left work, came back to work, stabbed the manager 15 times. The attack followed this Instagram rant accusing the manager of bullying and racism and all kinds of stuff. Now here's the thing. I think we read those and we think, wow, that is wrath. That feels like wrath. I think we think that comes out of nowhere, or it appears suddenly. That is not the case. It typically starts with something small, doesn't get dealt with, and eventually builds and becomes teenagers being shot in the face, managers being stabbed. It can be a missed text, a careless comment, being cut off in traffic, and before you know it, a door is slammed, a cruel word is spoken, or worse. Wrath begins with anger, this cluster of emotion that kind of comes over us for not getting our way. And it can spiral, though, if we're not careful, into something toxic. And I think this is what Jesus is actually trying to communicate. He's just trying to say, look, there's a spiral that can happen from the emotion of anger to destructive wrath. If we're not careful, this is where anger is going to take us. There's a spiritual growth expert and author. His name's John Mark Comer, and he actually came up, he kind of fleshed out this maybe spiral that Jesus is alluding to, from anger to wrath. And he broke it down into 7 very specific stages that I just personally have found so helpful, and so I wanted to share them with you today. And so Comer says this, here's stage 1. Stage 1 is very simple. We've all experienced this. We get angry, right? Again, someone cuts us off, a friend lets us down, a partner says something sharp, right? It's not always this big dramatic event, right? It's just this low level, low grade kind of frustration, and we feel overlooked, we feel disrespected, ignored, and anger bubbles up. Anger by itself, not sin, not deadly. It's just our emotional response to not getting our way, right? someone or something is getting in our way of what we want or what we expected would happen. And again, Jesus, that's not being forbidden. He just warns us, don't stay there. Deal with that immediately. Otherwise, stage 2 comes. And your ego gets involved. And your ego is always the enemy. Because now you're telling yourself a story, right? A story that goes something like this. How could they do that to me? I deserve better than this. They always act like, or they never act like. By the way, if you say that sentence ever, they always or they never, that's just not even a true sentence. And you're on your way to wrath, right? Because you've turned this in. No longer is this about an event. It's about how the event is threatening your sense of self. And your anger begins to get internalized and take root. And pretty soon, stage 3 comes along. This is a wonderful stage where we become the self-righteous victim. And now our story is turned into this. I'm no longer hurting. I'm convinced that I'm completely right. And I'm the hero in the story, and they're completely wrong, and they're the villain in the story. And then we go get all of our friends and convince them of that story. And now we've really made it a thing. And we cling to that narrative because it feels so good to be the hero, and it feels so good for them to be the villain. But in doing so, here's what you've done. You've lost your capacity to self-reflect. You've pretty much shut yourself off to growing. You lose nuance. Healing starts to become out of reach. But stage 4 is when things get really poisonous. Stage 4, we give into contempt. We've crossed the line at stage 4 because now it's not you hurt me, it's you're beneath me. You know what contempt is? Is when we take our anger and we crown it king or queen. Contempt is anger with a crown on. And we refuse now to see the other person as even fully human. We exaggerate their flaws. We ignore their strengths. We prop up our sense of moral superiority. This is exactly what Jesus is talking about when he's like, yeah, don't do that. When Jesus is like, don't say raka to somebody or you fool. I mean, what he's getting at is like, he's not saying avoid certain words. He's like, guard your heart from dehumanizing other people because you're well on your way to wrath at that point. Stage 5, we're no longer just internalizing all of this. This is now going public for everybody. It's leaking out. That's stage 5. Right? What's been brewing in our heart typically will find its way first out of our mouth or social media or whatever. Can show up as like passive-aggressive comments. Those are always fantastic. Sarcastic jabs, silence, gossip, cold shoulders, spicy texts, shady posts, whatever. You know what we call that, though? Here's what we do. We make it okay because we call all of that behavior, I'm just what? Venting. Give me a break with that. You're not just venting. You're dressing your wrath up as casual wear. You're not venting. You've engaged now in wrathful behavior. Anger is fully taken root in your heart. It's toxic. And you go to stage 6, which is hell on earth. This is where it starts to burn. Relationships are fractured, trust is broken, right? Could be a work team, a family, friendship, even a church. Stuff begins to erode, right? People now are walking on eggshells, or they just walk away altogether, right? Damage is done. That's what Jesus meant when he said you're in danger of the fire of hell. Not later, right now. A heart consumed by wrath creates hell on earth. And if we don't break the cycle, we hit stage 7, which is just destruction, full stop. If wrath is left unchecked, it leads to betrayal, abuse, divorce, violence, even literal murder in worst cases. Jesus isn't being all that dramatic when he draws a straight line between anger and murder. I think he's just trying to be deeply honest about what lives at the end of the road we're walking when we let anger take the wheel. My guess is most of you in this room have some experience with these 7 stages. You've either lived them, are living them, or you're experiencing them in some way. And these 7 stages are so deadly. They're so deadly because they're so deceptive, and they feel so good. They feel so good. The spiral from anger to wrath is deadly because it's intoxicating. There's a theologian out there, his name's Frederick Buechner, and he wrote a book called Wishful Thinking, and here's what he says about wrath in his book. Of the 7 deadly sins, wrath is possibly the most fun. To lick your wounds, to smack your lips over grievances long past, to roll over your tongue the prospect of bitter confrontations still to come, to savor to the last toothsome morsel both the pain you are given and the pain you're giving back. In many ways, wrath, it's a feast fit for a king. The chief drawback is that what you're wolfing down is yourself. The skeleton at the feast is you. You know, Jesus wasn't actually the only one to talk about this. One of the primary author, actually, of the Christian scripture is a guy named Paul. Today, he's often referred to as the Apostle Paul. And he wrote a bunch of letters that survived history, and they're the Christian scripture, essentially. And in a couple of different places, he actually just calls this out as well. Here's what he said. The Apostle Paul wrote this in a letter to some people. Get rid of all bitterness, all rage, and anger. Like, get rid of it. Brawling, slander, along with every form of malice. Why? Because he understood there's a straight line between anger and murder. There's a straight line. There's a spiral. There are stages we go through from anger to wrath that ends with us creating a hell on earth. He also said this, pretty similar. You must also rid yourselves of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips. Jesus' half-brother, a guy named James, was an early leader of the Christian church, said this: everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Why? Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Whatever you think about that, like what he's saying is, human anger, you're not gonna get there angry. You're just not. I think this gets summed up, one of my favorite quotes of all time. There's a philosopher down at USC, he's since passed, but his name was Dallas Willard. He's an amazing, brilliant Christian thinker as well. And he wrote a book called Divine Conspiracy. And he said this: there is nothing that can be done with anger that cannot be done better without it. You want to sum up 2,000 years of Christian tradition on human anger? There it is. There's nothing that can be done with anger that cannot be done better without it. Because love will get you there faster, better, cleaner. That's why we say a lot, like, love wins. Like, love is always gonna win. It's not that anger isn't motivating. It can be quite motivating. It's just, that's not a very good motivator. Love's a much better motivator. So the question that I want to leave you with is, how do you break the cycle? How do you get out of those stages? How do you get past anger that festers and sort of becomes this Hulk-like wrath, if you will, leaves nothing but like relational carnage in your wake? Because again, I think most of you in the room are probably going, yeah, I've lived that, felt that, yeah, I have some experience. Well, Jesus, right after this, so right after he's like, you're gonna be in danger of the hellfire, he tells us how to break the cycle. And here's what he writes, or what he says, and it gets recorded. Therefore, if you're offering your gift, so right after, you're in danger of hellfire, he says, so therefore, because that's true, if you're offering your gift at the altar, if you're going to church, right, and remember that your brother or sister has something against you, yeah, go deal with it, is what he says. Leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, and then come and offer your gift. So essentially all Jesus is saying, you want to break the cycle? Reconcile quickly. Don't pretend it's gonna go away. It's not gonna go away. Move toward healing as fast as you can. And then Jesus gets even more specific. He says, settle matters quickly with your adversary who's taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way. So apparently, it was fairly normal for two people to walk to court together, like, you know. But Jesus' point is very simple. Settle things early before they fester. Don't give them time to rot into wrath. And Jesus' words, honestly, are so countercultural. I mean, I don't really need to say it, but I'm gonna say it. Our world right now is angry. Like simmering with rage, angry. Scroll your feed, watch the news, sit in traffic. We're living in a culture of contempt and rage. And the message that we get fed every day, loud and clear, stay mad. You know, let your anger fuel you and be your drive. You know, get even, rage and anger, that's the way to justice. That's how we fight the man, you know. Look, sometimes, yes, there is something legitimate underneath our anger occasionally. There's real injustices, there are real wounds, there are real things worth pushing back against. I get it. But the question is anger the way forward in that pushing back? Is wrath what's gonna heal that? I mean, what cost? What cost? A better question that we've used a lot around here is when that anger, that cluster of emotions begins to take over, the question we've talked about a lot here is, what does love require of me right now? What does love require of me in this moment? Because there's very little that can be done with anger that can't be done better without it. Jesus is offering us a radically different way. I think a much simpler way. Go talk to them, make peace, apologize. As long as it is up to you, live at peace with people. Don't let it rot. That kind of reconciliation doesn't make headlines, but it will change everything. It'll change homes, churches, workplaces, marriages, and it'll change you from the inside out. You'll actually become a better human being. In fact, that guy Paul, who I quoted earlier, in another letter, he was talking to Christians. He was talking to people who would be like, I'm a Jesus person. And here's what he says. He says, your job, if you're a Jesus person, your job, your vocation, what it means to be a Jesus person is reconciliation. Here's what he wrote. All this is from God who reconciled us to himself through King Jesus. In other words, so Jesus already he taught us about reconciliation, so now you go do it. He gave us the ministry of reconciliation. Fix what's broken, heal wounds, have the courage to face your own anger, admit you've crossed a line, stop nursing the wound, start healing the relationship. Reconciliation is possible, it's powerful, and Jesus says that's how you break the cycle. Again, do I think you're gonna bump into some people who just don't wanna reconcile with you? Yeah, it does take two. It does. Forgiveness just takes you. Reconciliation takes both. But as long as it's up to you, do what you can. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you refuse to be ruled by the very thing that's ruining so much of the world: anger, rage, wrath. Let's just be people who take the first step, who interrupt the spiral, who break up those stages, who choose peace over payback. People who choose love when it's easier just to lash out. And listen, I know there's like a stream of thinking. And again, it's not just in like wider culture. I think it's in the American church as well, where it's like, you know, we look down on mercy and compassion and love and reconciliation. That's weak. Give me a break with that. Read a biography of the life of Jesus. Compassion, mercy, grace, love. What does love require of you? That moment somebody gets in the way of you getting your way, what does love require of you? Love is softer than rage and wrath, but it's also a whole lot stronger. We okay? I mean, there's a mood in here. You guys are like, oh, you know? So, I mean, I'm like feeling it. Here's what I'd say to that. If you're here and this is really an issue for you, our prayer team is going to be down in the front. And man, if you're just like, I just want like, you don't even know how to talk about it, like just release from anger, man, go see them. They're not there to judge you. They don't, you know, they're just there to be like, hear your story and say you're not alone in it. And also, if you're a guest, go grab a free pint glass or a coffee mug and say hi. You're not signing your life away. It doesn't mean you're, you know, forever stuck here. You can leave next time we say something stupid. So, hey, can I pray? And then we'll get out of here. Jesus, thanks so much for this morning and for talking about anger and wrath and that straight line between anger and murder. It's so important for us to wrestle with it. I mean, we wake up every day in a culture that's mad. Wake up every day in a culture that justifies that kind of anger and rage and wrath. But you've shown us a better way to be human, a compassionate way to be human, a loving way to be human, a way to be human that takes the first step towards saying, hey, can we get past this? Help us to be those kind of people, Jesus. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.